Wealth is a Choice podcast. Boom.
Let's listen to it. Let's listen to it.
Hey, Greg, thanks a lot for talking today. I've been looking forward to this discussion. Actually, I've been looking forward to this discussion ever since the bike ride from Grand Marais to the Sioux at a water stop when you and I talked briefly about what you do for a living. And I'm like, oh, damn, I gotta follow up with this guy. I got to talk to him later on.
Yeah, I've been looking forward too.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Thanks for being here today. I don't know how much time we're going to talk. There's a lot to talk about. We're going to discuss cybersecurity and AI and what you've been doing for a living for so many years, and educate me and everybody else on what we can do to try to stay ahead of the game and not get scammed.
Yeah, perfect.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of questions. I know very little about this, and so I'm going to ask you some questions, but any direction you take us down, I am very good with. But one of the first things I'm really interested in is, so I looked at cybersecurity. I'm in the financial services industry, so cybersecurity is something we try to educate our clients how to avoid. And one of the things I noticed after COVID is a tremendous spike in the number of cybercrimes that are taking place. And I saw data back in 2016, 17, 18, 19. We get into 2020, and it just skyrocketed, and it's been continuing at a high level. And right or wrong, this is one of these things where I know I'm biased. I'm not a fan of work from home. I haven't been a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it. And I place some of the blame on cybersecurity because of the flexibility of we have people's information everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I went to go visit a buddy down in South Carolina, flew into Charleston. First thing was we went downtown, had lunch at a nice place. There's a coffee shop outside. They had outside seating. They probably had 30 spots set there of all kinds of young professionals. They're all on their laptops. It's the middle of a weekday, mm-hmm. and they were there the entire time we're having lunch. I know they have to be working because they're not talking to each other. They're just on their own thing. And it's person, laptop person, laptop person, laptop person. Nothing is sacred. Nothing is hidden.
Yeah.
Conversations are being had with clients. People are asking for information. Nothing is sacred. And it freaks me out.
Yeah, well, it should, because it's pretty easy to eavesdrop, especially in that kind of an environment. And in that case, when there's multiple people, you actually are in a richer environment where there are multiple potential scams, if you will, that you can take advantage of. So just an individual working from home, a lot of times it's, a single topic, if you will. But if you're in a public environment and there's multiple people, that's the best of all worlds for someone that wants to instigate some crimes.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems like work from home, cybersecurity, they both elevate at the same time. It seems to me like they're related. I know the financial services industry, a lot of it is still work from home, 401ks, insurance companies, even the banking role. Jamie Dimon keeps saying, we got to come back. So there's still a lot of it out there. I called a financial institution and I talked to one person. This was like a 3-hour conversation, trying to get something done. 3-hour conversation. And after like 13 different people, I actually came back to the very first person that I started the whole thing with. And they all just keep passing me along. Every time they pass me along, they need sensitive information. This one needs the same sensitive information. Same. I can hear dogs barking. I can hear other people in the background. I talked to one guy. He sounded like he's on. He sounded like he's high. What I mean? Yeah. I don't know if he was or not, but he sounded out of it. I had to share my sensitive information to all these different people in all these different places.
Yeah, it's definitely problematic. And the thing that's really unfortunate about it is if your information is compromised, the ability of law enforcement to act on that is extremely limited. So in 2010, I started a study because you can use the FBI crime stats to find out how many cyber crimes there are per year. And you can get estimates in terms of how many detectives and so forth there are that can address cybercrime incidents. Well, all you have to do is use simple math. It takes a certain amount of time to investigate each crime. So if you take that block of time times each person, you know how many crimes per person you can do per year.
Okay.
And then you look at the total number of crimes in the United States that are reported, and these are the only ones that you know of are the ones that are reported. And when I first ran the study, it was less than 1% of the crimes that we had the capacity to address.
Okay.
And so what the implication of that is now there's thresholds. So, for example, it might be $100,000. If there isn't at least $100,000 lost, it's not going to be actively pursued. Okay, it might be written off, whatever.
Yep.
The cyber criminals are aware of these thresholds, and so they might instigate just up to that amount and then move on to the next. So there's just so many challenges that there's not a lot of great solutions when you have to rely on other organizations and other people to safeguard your money.
There's two things that you said there that I cued in on. One of them is that, like I did print off. I told you I got a lot of notes here, but this is the FBI report 2024. But it talks a lot about what's being reported. But like I get people trying to scam me like 20 times a day. Mm-hmm. I'm not reporting a single one of those because none of them have been effective. So there's a whole lot of scamming going on, and we just see the report that shows the ones that people reported. And I was on a call with Scott Besson was leading a call about cybersecurity with all the relative different departments, and I was on a listen-only mode listening to that conversation. And all these different departments, they were also saying they get reports, and some people report just to the FBI. Some people report to the FTC. Some people report to some banking something. Mm-hmm. You know, so also collectively, if I look at the FBI report, I'm not getting the full scope of all the crime that's actually being committed.
Correct. And if it's being instigated from an international source, a lot of times that falls through the cracks as well.
Which a lot of them are, aren't they?
Well, the most of the really egregious ones do come internationally, and they come from jurisdictions that don't have friendly ties with the United States. So even if you did have law enforcement involved, their ability to do anything can be really limited because if they are in a North Korea, for example, well, North Korea is going to give them a medal. Mm-hmm. They're not going to say, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that," and send them to the United States. So it's law enforcement is in a very difficult position for that.
Okay.
And the other thing is if you look local law enforcement up through the state level, generally they're not joining the police force for cybercrime. Mm-hmm. There are some, and that has been an increase in terms of people with a technical background. But for the most part, it's just someone with a law enforcement background. If they get into cybercrime, a lot of times they take like a 1-week class mm-hmm. To how to pull a phone, to get information off of a phone or something like that. And they spit out the generated report, submit that as evidence, and that's the investigation. There's very little actual forensics going on in that situation. Well, if someone's only been to a 1-week class and maybe it's only in mobile, how are they going to do these things that are cloud-based or right. AI-based or something like that? They're not going to have an idea. So then you look at a federal location like the FBI. It's almost the same thing, though. They don't have infinite resources. There's not that many people that are doing cyber for the mm-hmm. FBI relative to the number of crimes that are out there.
The thing you mentioned about minimums, too, mm-hmm. My first experience with minimums was this guy, Peter, that was managing an estate of a deceased person. And yeah. I had a small investment relative to the estate that was involved in money that was going to a charity. And I didn't even know she died for about a year until after she died, because she told me to go through Peter, who was the accountant. And so he was the point person. But I would reach out to her, a couple times a year as well. And she wasn't calling me back. And I finally looked up an obituary, and sure enough, she had passed away. So Peter led me on. And at some point, I requested some documents from Peter, and he inadvertently had a document he wished I had never seen, which indicated to me that he is not actually the first in line trustee, and he has not actually distributed all the money to the rightful heirs. And then I called one of the rightful heirs, an elderly lady out in Massachusetts, and she doesn't know who I am. I thought this is going to be the most difficult phone call I ever do, to have her believe that I'm not trying to scam her, as I try to seek to understand. But so anyways, long story short, Peter stole a whole lot of money. When I contacted the FBI, this is when I first learned about minimums. At that time, they wanted to see, I think, at least a $600,000 embezzlement or steal, And I had to prove that. So I had to contact all these banks and try to trace the money and put this whole case together, which I did. And it turned out to be like $2 million or $1.5 million or something like that. And he still had assets that he hadn't fully used. So it was a big enough case, and then they took it on. And I was surprised to hear about this minimum threshold. Like, this guy's stealing money. And just to wrap that story up, unfortunately, right before Peter got prosecuted, I say unfortunately, he had a heart attack and died. And it was literally a couple of weeks before he was supposed to be brought into court, and this whole thing was going to come together. And he gave money to churches, he gave money to charity, and they thought he was a saint. And that's why I say it's unfortunate. They never got to learn, who this guy is. But bottom line is, that's when I first learned about minimums, and it really shocked me. Like, what do you mean, $600,000 minimum before you're even going to look at it?
Yeah. Was that case in the UP?
No.
Okay. Because I am familiar with, I was in on the investigation of one very similar to that.
Okay.
City in the UP, one of the larger ones, if not the largest. And there was a guy that was a multimillionaire, made a lot of money on the railroads and things like that, which, in the UP, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And he was an elderly gentleman, and he had a place in Florida, and he's down in Florida, and he gets into some sort of an accident. Can't remember if it was a car accident. I don't remember. Well, his power of attorney had him put into a nursing home. And, after a while, the guy's recovered and so forth, and he comes out of the home, and he goes to make a simple purchase. It was like a $10 purchase. And it's like, no, your checking account is overdrawn. You can't do that. He says, there's no way. I mean, I've got money to cover that. Well, come to find out, he was penniless. And the power of attorney sold all the railroad stocks, all of the personal effects and so forth. And they were going to auctions and selling it.
Oh, man.
And I got called in because digital forensics is how you find out what's going on.
Okay.
And there was a retired state police detective that told them, hey, call this guy and he can maybe help you out. And so I started to piece this together, and you could see that he clearly was working with other people, because they had to take all of this, these personal things to all these auctions all over the UP.
Like physical belongings?
Physical belongings. They would go
They
to,
really took everything.
They took literally everything. And it was the same thing. The guy was, making like little chapel type things and so forth. But when I'm going through the investigation, I'm going through the hard drives, all of a sudden I start coming across child pornography. Well, that changes the whole so I call up the police department and say, hey, this is what's on it. And they're like, well, send us the drives. And I'm not going to send it back to you by the mail, because that's federal crime. And you guys come get it. And they said, no, we can't come get it. But the Secret Service was on their way to that location, and I called the Secret Service and said, hey, can I give you this stuff to take out? Well, what happened was the guy died of a heart attack.
No.
But it was clear that his wife was obviously involved and still alive, along with these other individuals. And I could identify some of those individuals. And he was doing things like buying trusts for his grandkids and so forth. And the money was pretty difficult to follow. And then when the drives get to that police agency, I says, hey, are you able to continue the investigation? And they said, no, we haven't been trained. And I'm like, I'll come up and do it for you in your location.
Yeah.
And they said, no. They said, the guy's already dead, and we've already drilled the drives.
Oh, man.
So in other words, you drill into the drives to destroy them.
Yeah.
So all the evidence was then gone. And we're talking, it was over $7 million.
That's crazy.
And the older gentleman, he had to pay capital gains on all that stuff.
Wow.
Well, he still had the place in Florida on the water, and he had to sell that simply to cover capital gains.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So the impacts of these things are very substantial. And the bit about the power of attorney, you got to really be careful who you choose for a power of attorney and how you set that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got lots of stories like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't have blind faith in anybody or...
No. And this guy was if I told you more about the person that was the power of attorney, he would be easily identifiable because of the visibility within the community and what his background was prior to taking over this person's estate.
You know, I learned a word recently for like giving money to the churches and stuff, virtue signaling. I heard that word, and I've seen that a lot. That resonates with me. I see people that do that.
Yeah, yeah.
People think they're just something else, and
yeah,
in reality, they got another game going on.
Yeah, you know, there's other challenges. So, for example, you know, my parents are still around, but they're old. My mom is in, say, 85 or so. My dad is 95. In good health. My dad still pulls the golf cart. I mean, around the course, he golfs 3 days a week. I mean, if you saw him, you'd not guess that he's 95.
Wow.
And my mom is a very intelligent person, but they're showing their age, and they're not technically savvy. So, for example, one time recently, they went her in Florida, and she saw that $30,000 was missing out of her account. But then she realized after sounding the alarm that she bought a CD.
Okay.
You know, so it was just, you know, you forget things.
Sure.
Fine. But that just surfaces the example of how vulnerable people in that situation could be. And what I suggest is when people have assets and so forth, and the family is maybe spread around a little bit where you don't have physical contact every day, that you do things like set up code words. Mm-hmm. So if I were to call you, you know, and you want to make sure that it's me, mm-hmm. You have some sort of like a code word so that they really know that it's you, mm-hmm. That it's a legitimate type thing. Mm-hmm. Because the forms that the cyber crimes take are very complex in many situations. And if you have substantial assets, number one, you're an attractive target. But number two, they're going to put that much more investment into try to go after those assets. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're someone that has limited assets, they might try some simple things and then just move on. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have, in our industry, we need a verbal confirmation to make a trade, distribute money, whatever. We know we know our clients. It's not that hard. Now their voice could be disguised, you know, through AI, which we'll get to.
Yeah,
you know, that might not be as reliable as just hearing their voice. But we have a history. We know them. We can have a conversation. We can say, "This is who I think it is." And usually, people don't need money suddenly. They're like, "Hey, we're doing this home project, you know, 6 months from now, 12 months from now, hey, this is coming up. Hey, somebody's getting married or whatever. So we're kind of like, we know something's going to happen in the future. And then when they call for that, it's expected. But I think about big institutions that you just call in on, that they have no idea who you are. I would think that'd be a lot easier to impersonate and commit crime. And I was talking to a client the other day, and he was telling me his brothers, not all there mentally to deal with his day-to-day life. And he called on behalf of his brother at one point to help him out. And it was so easy for him to be relayed the information. I mean, how would it not be?
Right,
they don't know
right.
who he is.
Sure.
He has all the right information.
Yeah. No, it's true. We've all heard of maybe two-factor authentication. Like when you log into your email, you get some sort of
Right.
a token or another application that you go after, that kind of thing. Within your account, you can also set up thresholds where if there's a debit of a certain amount, you instantly find out about it.
Okay.
And that kind of thing. Those are important safeguards to put in. Also, what's important is just to get some sort of a balance report frequently. Okay. Being in cybersecurity, I'm kind of a target. Okay. I've been
That's ballsy, actually. Like, why would you be a target? I want to
Yeah.
stay the hell away from you.
Yeah. So, for example, I lived in Chile for a while, and I was using an American Express card when I was in Chile. And I logged in, and I saw there were transactions that were happening in Niagara Falls in Ontario.
Okay.
And they were like 15 minutes apart since I'd logged in. And so I called American Express, and they're like, well, we'll get to it in a few days. And I'm like, a few days? I said, another one just hit while I'm on the phone. I said, It's at this place. You can go and get them right now. Yeah. And it took them like 8 or 10 days to shut down the account. It's much better now.
Yeah.
But the point is
the lack of urgency.
The lack of urgency, and I was vigilant about it.
Yeah.
They were like $500 transactions.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about the volume of transactions and the amount of money, it doesn't meet those thresholds.
Yeah.
I got a call one time from one of the banks based in New York, and the guy called me at my house. I says, well, why are you calling me? And he said, well, we're just looking for the best processes and things we can, because at that time, every minute cost them $5 million when there's some sort of a situation. So if they can shave off 1 minute in the response time, that saves them $5 million. If you can save 10 minutes, that type of thing. So when you're talking millions of dollars per minute, $500 isn't that big a thing.
Can you explain that again?
So
XYZ company, credit card company, whatever, responding to customers.
Right.
You're talking, okay.
Yeah. Well, in the financial institutions, the urgency a lot of times is how large the transaction is, and if there's a pattern of it and so forth. Whereas if it's a low dollar amount, and typically these things start with like a 10-cent transaction because they want to make sure that it's inactive. Right. Okay, and then they'll follow it up very shortly, usually within 24 hours, if not sooner, with a larger transaction, and it just keeps cascading.
Okay.
But the point about like the large banks, the things that they're most interested in are the large number things. The things that are $500, they don't have time to deal with.
Because it costs more money to stay on the hunt than it does to solve the crime.
And if you have X number of people that can hunt and they're trying to hunt for $500, they're not hunting for $5 million.
Got it.
Yeah.
We had a similar situation with the lack of urgency. I'm like, this is a done deal. You know where the people are. So my wife had some friends from Japan come in, and then they visited, and then they flew to New York all together, and my wife flew back home, and then they went back to Japan. And I see these plane tickets come on, and credit card. I'm doing the budget. And I saw a couple. I didn't see where they went. I just saw that it was a plane ticket, and I thought, oh, she must have bought the tickets for one of the. It was basically family from Japan. She was her host family when she was in college, and there's close as mom, sister, brother, like they're literally like family. So, well, she must have bought one of their tickets. And then a couple months later, when I was actually putting the budget together, I saw it was a series of tickets, and it was $7,000, and it was all to Cancun, nowhere around New York or Japan. And so I called my wife. I'm like, do you know anything about tickets to Cancun? She's like, no, that's not me. So we called the credit card company, told them about it, and we knew the flight, we knew the seats. We know everything.
Sure.
And she's like, are you guys going to go down there and arrest him? She's like, no, we're not going to. Like, how much easier of an arrest do you want?
Right.
Like, you know the time they're going to arrive. You know what name it's under. You know the seat they're sitting in. Like, this is the easiest one. And they wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the challenges you have there is the international. If it's an international flight, then they've got to coordinate with the other jurisdictions. Whereas if it was a domestic flight, it would have been a lot easier to,
Yeah. So criminals know these thresholds. They know what's not likely to get heat.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So if someone were trying to protect their assets, there's a number of things, and you want to make it as difficult as possible. So there's really basic things like passwords. People got to have a fairly complex password, and the bit about where do you store your password, it should be unique for each, let's say, account.
Okay.
So if you have a Fidelity account and a Schwab account, you don't want to have the same username and the same password.
Okay.
If you can create a username that is not your name, all the better. So it's just something, maybe it's just random characters.
Okay.
And in your password, if it allows, even in your username, if it allows, I would encourage the use of commas. Because a lot of times when you download a file and you have a file maybe of stored passwords, they're comma delimited. The fields are comma delimited. So the comma might make it look like that's the end of your password and the next password starts there.
Okay.
So there's subtle little things like that you can do. Obviously, you want to have special characters and so forth, and be at least maybe 10, 12 in length.
Mm-hmm.
That's the basic stuff. But beyond a password, you want to have some form of two-factor authentication. So that could be a text message. It could be something like Authy or something of that nature.
Okay.
It could be, any number of things. Email is common where it'll email it to you, but if they have compromised your email account, they've got that.
Now, why can't they just compromise the texting too?
Well, they can. And some texting actually can go into your email. So, for example, if you use a Google Voice,
Okay.
you can have the text go into your Gmail account. So there's some challenges with that. But what I prefer is you get something like an Authy or some sort of an authenticator where it's an app on your phone that generates a code that you type in, and it's good for like 60 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, and it's a mathematical thing. That is stronger than the texting and so forth. But within your account, you want to set up some sort of a validation that lets you know if there have been any transactions or if there are any pending transactions and that kind of thing. Because a lot of people don't do that. Even with your checking account, do you know that something over $50 was purchased on your account? Okay. So those little thresholds and those types of reports are really, really valuable because it gives you a compressed time frame. Because one of the most significant challenges when you're trying to go after a cybersecurity perpetrator is too much time has elapsed. Most companies, unfortunately, they don't realize they've even been compromised. So they don't know they've been hacked. So they don't report it because they don't know. We used to joke, me and this other guy that did a lot of investigations on that type of thing, that at least the company knows they've been hacked.
Yep.
Because, and some of them are borderline negligence. But the companies that maybe even are more negligent don't even know they've been hacked, and there's more data circulating out. There's also the bit about when you're setting up an account, there will be maybe questions to ask. So what was your mother's maiden name, those types of things. Be careful what you put into those, because that can be very easy to find out. So what I would suggest is, rather than typing in your mother's maiden name, you can put anything you want in there. Put, my shoes are too big. Okay? Nobody is going to try to hack your mother's maiden name with my shoes are too big. Okay?
Right.
So some of that nonsensical thing it can also add.
So on this story of the Cancun tickets, I remember how I caught it. I said 2 months. I think it was actually within a few weeks, because how I caught it was, we've got a system that we use to manage our money and for our clients, where your accounts show up on an online, your own online site, if you will, and you can see all your accounts. You can see your credit card accounts, and the balance just jumped up. So it's a read-only system, which I like having something like that.
Yeah.
And you're talking about like family members and having a code word, if you would. But I also like the idea, especially like aging parents or whatever, that they have some system that organizes how much money they have and where it's located, where it's at. They can give their trustee or their kid access to be able to be aware of where it's at, and if something happens, they can help them with it.
Yeah, that's a big deal, because a lot of times the kids or whoever don't even know what exists where.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big black hole, and then
it's an orphaned account.
Yeah.
That's a challenge, and it's a difficult conversation to have with aged parents. I can speak from experience. You don't know, should you be driving? There's just so many topics that it's a difficult one, and if it's not handled correctly, there's all kinds of negative implications.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't have a quick method to be able to see where their money's at. Like, somebody might have an app to their 401k, or they might have a quick app to the bank account, but they don't have the information kind of organized, up to date, that's all encompassing. And so something could be happening over here with their debt or the credit cards or a loan. And if they're only paying attention to the 401k, or sometimes people aren't even looking at that, except once or twice a year, because they're afraid to, because the market's going up or down or whatever, and they don't want to see it all the time.
Yeah, the thing about how to access. So apps, I'm not always a fan of using an app, downloading an app, because you don't know. Every time you add a new layer, you add something that could be attacked.
Brian can tell you the parking. We went and parked, and I had to download an app to be able to park at the spot. And I was telling Ryan, I don't even like this.
Yeah. Or QR codes.
Yeah.
I just don't like them, because you don't know. Yeah, they might serve a purpose, but there might be something else that's in there that nobody knows about, even the people that created the QR code.
Yeah.
But one thing is, when you use a device to access an account, a lot of accounts you can register that device. And maybe when you log in, then it recognizes you're on that device, that type of thing. Well, which kind of device to use? And I am not a fan of using a Windows computer to log in, because what happens if you have malware on there and you're not even aware of it? For that matter, it could be a Mac too, but particularly Windows, because it just seems to be flaky. So a cheap way to do it, an inexpensive way to do it, is to get a dedicated device like a Chromebook. And an advantage to a Chromebook is that they can be reset pretty much every time you use them. And so they're not a rich target for a lot of malware. I'm not to say that they're impervious to it, but the ability to compromise it over an extended period of time is much less than, like, say, a Windows computer. Or maybe you have a phone or an iPad or something like that you're using, Well, what I suggest is that you have some sort of device that you're just not also using to surf Reddit or something like that.
Okay.
The other thing is if you
So do your exposure stuff on a different.
have a Wild West device,
Okay.
where if you want to do something crazy or just surf the web, it's on your Wild West device.
Yep.
Okay, but your other device that's for important stuff, you limit it to that. Of course, you want to have the malware, virus scan type things going on, but a lot of times those packages are almost more trouble than they're worth because you get all these upsells and all kinds of things, so people don't really want to use it. Another reason why a Chromebook might be a good option. But again, limited. You spend the $300 for a Chromebook. If you've got significant assets, it's money well spent. But this bit about registering the device, if you register the device, there's like a fingerprint in the device so that where you're logging into, it recognizes your device. So even if your account and password is compromised, it's not your device. And so that kind of raises some sort of an authentication thing, which maybe they require you to use an authenticator app or an email or a text or something like that before it actually lets you in. So that's another thing to look at. The authenticator apps are, I really encourage those if that's possible. And most of the large financial institutions have those.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the Chromebook, I'm not familiar with that. I haven't had one before. But so you're basically using that solely for the purposes of that's how you log into your accounts. That's where you add the apps.
It's not even apps. You have a dedicated device that's only for your financial things.
Okay.
So bank accounts, whatever. You only use that device. You could use that same device maybe if you're doing online tax returns or something like that.
Okay.
Okay. A Chromebook is different in that it is a Google device, but it's kind of almost a cloud-based operating system, if you will. So it has the bare minimum. You can install apps like to bring up spreadsheets and so forth, but don't install the apps. My point is you keep it as vanilla as possible.
Okay.
And yeah.
What about if I have to use an app to park, for example?
Sure.
And then when I'm done, I can delete that app? And is it no harm, no foul? Or is my info somewhere?
Yeah. Not all of the apps are good at letting you know what they're getting access to.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why I really am not a fan of apps. Legitimate apps, they'll tell you, hey, we need access. Like Huntington. If you want to deposit a check into Huntington, and if you don't have location-based services turned on, it's not going to let you. Okay. So then you've got to go turn on the location-based services, and so there's some of that, and then it would know, hey, is this transaction happening from where it normally happens or not? So there are things that would help with the fraud detection.
Okay.
But with the apps, my son makes apps, and he can make some pretty incredible apps in a morning. Okay. And you would say, well, this is great. I want to keep it on my device, but you have no idea what it's doing in the background.
Right.
Because if it has access to your contact list and so forth. And what some people do is in their contact list, they might put in user accounts and passwords in their own contact list. Not a good idea. The bit about the password apps.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have a single password as a contact, but that is interesting. It makes you wonder how many people do that.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
And then everything has access to your contacts and photos. And
yes.
You might take a picture of your password.
Well, and contacts always have an email account. You can put your email account in there. So if you know the account, that's half the battle. Then you just got to get the password.
This goes back for the damn work from home stuff that drives me nuts. So back in the day in the financial services industry, it was forbidden to bring an SD little hard drive and plug it into a computer in your office that you used. You can even put one in there, let alone then leave the office with that hard drive. But you were not even allowed by compliance to put that thing in the computer. And now people are working everywhere, and they've got contacts on their phone. They got laptops. Every time, like if we download, somebody would email us something. Somebody might email me a tax return or something, or maybe their accountant does, or whatever. I get the return and the email. I view it on my computer, and then maybe if I need it, I'll store it in our secure drive, cloud drive. But it's in my download folder. And we go through and we delete all of our download folders. And I don't know how many people do that. And so they've got laptops all over the place with stuff that it has downloaded while they've been doing some service work for a client. So this information's all over the place now. Yeah. I remember, so we were watching like an old 80s movie, or just look at any Mission Impossible movie where they sneak into the office and they're all disguised and they go in, they got a hard drive, and you stick it into the computer and the music gets intense and somebody almost walks into the room on them and they pull it out just in time. Now you could just be at a coffee shop, you take a screenshot of all the private information. You don't need to do all that retina scan and stuff anymore.
Well, the coffee shops, you can put a camera on the wall, like a security camera. Yeah. And people will think it's a security system for that coffee shop. And it's just someone planting a camera. And the resolution, you've got a 4K camera, you can zoom in pretty tight on some of those things. It's not just the work at home, it's the bring your own device. So bringing devices into the work environment. And it depends on the organization. But let's talk about like a university, for example, where you have students that bring their device from home that need to log into the university systems. Same with faculty, staff. There's all kinds of implications with that. And how to handle the bring your own device is one of the most significant security challenges for organizations, corporate or otherwise.
Yeah. Because they have corporate computers and stuff, but people bring their own in and they end up doing business work on it? Or
well, think about it this way, a phone. Okay. How many businesses where you actually use your phone for business purposes?
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah, Zoom, whatever.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So just the phone, which is probably the worst thing anyway. Everybody uses it for Facebook and so forth. So, yeah.
All right. Let's see. Laptop farms. Have you had any experience with those?
A little bit. What do you think of when you think of a laptop farm?
Oh, again, I hate work from home. So like people, I've had clients tell me, like my neighbor has 2 jobs. He works for 2 different tech companies, doesn't work for either of them basically, but neither of them know that he has another W-2 at the same time, whatever. Yeah. Laptop farms I've read stories where it could be people that work overseas and they pay somebody in the United States to host their laptop, so it looks like they're working within the United States. They log into it and do whatever, and some stealing has taken place from that.
Yeah, one of the countries that is kind of into this type of thing is North Korea. Okay, because to be able to work remote. And I actually, years ago when I was a corporate and I was a programmer, there was a programmer in my department that was outsourcing all of his assignments to someone else. So in other words, he's getting paid, let's just say $50,000, and he was outsourcing all of the things he was supposed to work on for, let's say, $25,000. So he's clearing $25K doing nothing.
Yeah. So he's pre-AI, like a long time ago.
This was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that environment has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And it could be where you're, using someone, going through someone to make it look like you're in another location. But a lot of times it can even be a masquerade. So, for example, XYZ company needs a programmer, and you hire this programmer that is going to be someone that is going to conduct a cyber attack.
Mm-hmm.
And they could be doing all kinds of legitimate work, but at the same time, they're also doing laying the groundwork for the cyber attacks, whether it is, laying traps within networks or just gathering information, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge in terms of the hiring process. Are you really getting what you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have the remote aspect, you don't know who's logged in. There's really no way to tell.
Mm-hmm.
You could put a camera up there,
right.
But who's gonna do that? It's the same type of situation in a university environment. If you have an online class, who's actually taking the test?
Right.
It's the same type of thing. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I hope most people have some ethics, to them, some values. I think a lot of people do. But you've heard about where people are a lot braver when they're talking with somebody online than face to face. Like I saw a video of two dogs barking at each other. There's a fence, and the fence is on a driveway, and it opens and shuts. And the fence is shut, and the dogs are going nuts. And the fence opens, and the dogs both stand there and kind of look around, and then the fence shuts again, and they're going nuts again. So when you don't have, I hate to say, if it seems like people that may take a risk and do something unethical are more likely to do it when they have nobody watching over their shoulder. Maybe they wouldn't have done that in a normal environment where you're working with a team and you're all together.
Yeah, you get the interpersonal piece.
Yeah.
It's the same. If you are calling, a grandma and asking her to go get you some Apple gift cards, that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
versus if you actually saw that person and watched them kind of hobble out the door,
Mm-hmm.
and and you saw what they lived in,
Mm-hmm.
that they really didn't have the resources to
Mm-hmm.
give away $500. You're not going to do the same type of thing. I mean, social media is probably the flashpoint of that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are making all these posts and bold things, but then when they find out the kind of the personal pieces, most people are like, "Oh man, kind of got out of hand," but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize it. Yeah.
Is there any good data or any idea on how many criminals are out there? It could be like in one person can do a lot.
Yeah.
And it seems like there's an infinite number of criminals, or is it at all consolidated in any degree that we can take down some big ones?
Well,
and
there's
then it'll make a big dent, or they're just scattered all over the place?
they're scattered all over the place, and the challenge is, for example, Russia. Okay, they're one of the, I'll just call them one of the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they are enabled to do these types of things, to conduct cyber attacks,
Mm-hmm.
and to go out onto the message boards and to create bots that elevate discussions and inflame misinformation and that kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing. Maybe give it some credence,
Mm-hmm.
because people like say, well, I see it on this board and this board, so it must be true.
Right.
That type
Seen
of
it
thing.
2 or 3 times now.
Right. But it's a cybercrime is essentially a form of warfare,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just more economically based versus maybe more physical, if you
Okay.
will. But if you were to say to Putin, say, hey, stop the cyber attacks, he says, sure,
Yeah.
okay, or North Korea, turn that off. No,
Yeah.
yeah sure.
Yeah.
So
Do you have any idea if we do any of it? I mean, it seems like it'd be naive that we
there's
wouldn't.
to be honest, the majority of cyber crime sources from the United States. Okay, there's different ways to look at it, to categorize it: the number, the amounts, the modes, that type of thing. But we're in the top 5 for ourselves. Okay.
I mean, amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The cast of characters would be places, China and Russia and North Korea, Iran, those types of locations. The funny thing is when you look at the size of the countries and how sometimes you're just like they're really quite you almost admire their ability to pull off some of those things given what they have. So maybe 3-4 years ago, we had an FBI agent come onto campus to present to a class. And he made the statement, I'm not saying it's accurate or not, but it's in the scheme of things. He made the statement that the DeVos family has a higher GDP than North Korea.
That kind of stuff. Like even look at Russia. I think the GDP is like $1.5 trillion. I think, I don't know. I haven't looked at it lately, but I mean, the United States is like $30 trillion.
Well, yeah, yeah.
And they're a major player around the world. I think Germany's maybe $4.5 trillion or so. And Japan or Germany is the number 3 and 4.
Right.
I think China's like 16 trillion, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And Russia's $1.5 trillion.
Yeah, you're just like, boy, how can they be everywhere like they are?
Yeah.
And we stumble over ourselves. And if you look at the budget, for example, for the Department of Defense, it's like 2.5 times larger than China's.
I mean, even at what is it, $800 or $900 billion?
Yeah.
And Russia's entire economy is $1.5 trillion.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting thing when you start looking at those numbers.
Yeah.
But if you have a country that, I don't know if the DeVos family has a higher GDP or not, but it's in the discussion.
Right.
But they're certainly not the richest. You look at someone like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, they have a higher GDP than most countries. NVIDIA has a higher market capitalization than the GDP of every country in the world except for China and the United States.
Isn't that nuts?
Every country except for China and the United States.
The most valuable company in Europe, I think, is $450 billion.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of trillions. A lot of companies in the trillions. And NVIDIA, what are they, 5+ trillion
right
now.
around plus or minus. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So the resources are out there in realms that you don't even think about. And corporate espionage, China's been pretty good at vacuuming things up, and you don't even know it. Okay. I've worked cases where small entrepreneur in West Michigan, and he had this nice little invention where he was making maybe $5 million a year in sales. So nice business for himself, doing very well. Had it patented and everything. Well, China made a knockoff, killed his business. Because they got in and vacuumed up his intellectual property. And so a lot of times it's
and was he manufacturing in China?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, but a lot of times it's not even literal dollars that they're after. It's the intellectual property that they can convert into dollars, or in a situation of countries to just put stress on economies and that type of thing. So, cybercrime is a very large area, very wide scope.
Do you know much about patenting and trademarks?
A little. I've been through the process.
Yeah. So like if you patent, I know you can patent domestically. I've got some patents domestically, or you could pay a lot more money and patent internationally. Did this person not have an international patent? Do you know?
Didn't have international patent.
Yeah. Would it have made the difference if you did?
It probably wouldn't. In that situation, it gets into these thresholds. $5 million a year company. Are they going to go after, investigate fully?
Damn thresholds.
Yeah. You either want to be big or small.
It's a lot of money to somebody.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, it's all good. It's all good. But it's such a complex environment when you look at jurisdictions, you look at capabilities that are evolving, you look at law enforcement's ability to react to it and so forth. You look at corporations, whether they even want anybody to know. That type of thing. So
there's laws around reporting it, right?
In
How
theory,
quickly a company is supposed to report. They've been
in theory, they don't always necessarily know that they're, and they can plead they don't know that they've been compromised. So, yeah.
Somewhat related to work from home, I was going to ask you about, but not solely, but home networks. Just what should people do around their house to be more secure? And do they get attacked at home? They're just getting attacked on the device, no matter where it is, right?
Yeah. Well, they can be attacked. The network can be compromised, and your network might control things like security cameras and Ring doorbells and things of that nature.
The locks on the doors, the garage door.
Yeah.
Everybody loves being able to open the garage door before they pull into the driveway.
Yeah. Turn on and off the lights and all that kind of stuff. Turn off the security cameras.
Right.
So with a home network, you want to make sure that you have a fairly new router. If your router is older than you can't remember when you bought it, it's time to get a new one. Okay. The first thing you do when you log in, when you bring up a new router, is you got to create an account and so forth. Make sure that you don't use defaults on that for a default password and that kind of thing. So set some sort of an account. Probably what I would do is write it down and put it somewhere within the house that you know of, so that you can direct someone where it might be, that type of thing. One challenge is if you keep all your passwords and then something happens to you, how are people going to access your accounts, that kind of thing. So that whole piece about sharing accounts and passwords is a challenge, but you might have some sort of a paper trail to allow a trusted person to get access to your stuff if they need it. But once you bring up a new router, you want to download the new firmware, and you want to download the new firmware periodically because there's going to be updates because of security issues, new features, whatever it is. So you want to keep up on top of that. A new router also lets you have a guest network typically. The guest network is what you want your friends and family to come in and use. You don't want to have them use your primary network. So there's that piece of it. Some networks let you put in a VPN or something like that right out of the network. But you probably want to use some sort of a VPN, at least for your banking and that type of thing. Okay. VPN doesn't give you as much protection as it used to, but it does. It's another layer. So anytime you can add another layer of difficulty, that might be just the layer that the perpetrator's like, I'm going to move on to someone else.
So I'm not familiar with VPN networks.
Yeah.
That means if I go to my phone, I could be using my Wi-Fi. I've got guest Wi-Fi. I could be using my main Wi-Fi, but I could also be using a VPN.
Yes. Yeah. So a VPN is a virtual private network, and what it does is it'll encrypt the traffic.
Okay.
So if someone has a sniffer going, they can see what's going through your network. And if it's plain text, it's pretty easy.
Okay.
Now, a VPN encrypts it. A VPN also allows you to use a server from another location. So, for example, I could make it look like I'm coming from New York, Amsterdam, whatever, using the VPN. But it does give you that encryption. Some VPNs log what's going on. Other VPNs don't do logs.
Okay.
You probably want an unlogged VPN, not necessarily because you're going to pull off a cybercrime, but because if someone hacks that VPN, they could hack the logs, and get access to your stuff, those types of things.
Okay.
But especially if you're going to use your devices like at a coffee shop, you can, if you decide you're going to join their network, make sure you bring up the VPN though too.
Bring up your VPN.
Bring up your VPN because they might be logging the network traffic.
So the VPN is something you use to log into a Wi-Fi network.
As you log in, then you can enable the VPN.
Got it.
Okay.
You can tell I've never used one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty useful tool. Again, it's just one more layer, and it used to be a really strong layer. It's not quite as strong as it used to be, but it's still an advantage.
Okay.
Yeah. So a VPN and a new router that you update the firmware on periodically, and have a guest network that other people use instead of giving everybody your Wi-Fi password.
Now you mentioned passwords and storage of passwords. Where do you like to store your passwords and keep a log of when you change them? And
yeah, to be honest, the ones for my like retirement accounts, the ones that would be the whale if it were a whale. You talk about whaling and spearfishing, that type of thing.
Which you might have to describe.
Yeah. Okay. So if a cyber criminal is doing some, they're trying to go after a target. Maybe they send you an email or something like that. The richer the target, the higher the potential for a good payoff. So, for example, a CEO would be a rich target, and they call that a whale. Okay. What I do for my financial accounts beyond like my day-to-day checking account, which I keep at a very low balance, that's written down, and it's in a location, and it's on a piece of paper that there's just so much other stuff on it you would never know what it is.
Okay.
Okay. And it's not stored anywhere. So it's not in my password apps or anything like that. It's literally on a piece of paper that if I had to direct someone to it, then they could look and figure it out.
Okay.
They say, okay, there it is. But if you looked at that sheet of paper, it looks like I was using it for just brainstorming or something like that. There's all kinds of things that might look like a password or an account or just comments and that kind of thing. But that's what I do. And in the for the typical stuff, including my checking account, that's in a password app in an iPhone.
Okay.
Okay. So Apple has a app that I store those types of things in. The nice thing is, you can, for convenience, you can use those where you try to log into Fifth Third.
Okay.
And it'll pick up your username and password from that account. But I don't enable that for my banks. So when I bring up the app, and I'm not a fan of apps, but I'll use them for my banks, I have to type in the username and the password.
Right.
I don't have that even stored in the app where the username is, where you just have to type in the password.
Okay.
And my usernames are not something that you would know as a username. It's not like my name.
Okay.
My name at Gmail or something.
Right.
No. That's a bad username. But those apps you can go into, and it's biometric to get into it. So it's based on facial recognition.
Okay.
Which, when we talk about AI, we can talk about the security of that type of thing.
Okay.
But again, that's for things that, it would really be a pain if someone got into, and if they managed to figure out how to get into my bank account, okay. But I keep a skinny amount in my checking, and I just move money during the week as I need to, rather than keep a fairly large amount in there. I mean, I talk to people that have like 100,000 checking, and I'm like, you're nuts.
Too much exposure.
Too much exposure. Yeah. So
because it's checking, is a savings more secure than a checking?
Doesn't make any difference.
Doesn't?
Yeah. No. So that's what I do. I write down the important passwords on a sheet of paper that has other stuff on it. I know some people that'll put it in an envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or maybe they'll put it in a safe deposit box. But my user accounts and passwords are such that I couldn't remember them.
Yeah.
They're too complex, and there's no patterns to them, that I would have to go to the safety deposit box all the time to get them. Now, maybe you want to also put them there.
Yeah.
But then every time you
They
update
might be
them,
outdated once in a while.
Right.
Password protected Excel spreadsheets?
I am not a fan of Microsoft Office.
Okay.
It is so easy to break.
Okay.
Microseconds to seconds, you can hack most of that stuff. Yeah. It's not hard. So, put in a password on Excel, that doesn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I would really hesitate to storing stuff on a laptop. What happens if your laptop's stolen? Now, you might put it on an external drive that you attach at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
You could use cloud storage, but the challenge with cloud storage is, and there are examples of this out there if you do some research, where people that actually work at those organizations are reading your data.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, if you're a crook, it's a good place to work.
Well, yeah, it's the best.
And if you work from home.
Yeah, yeah. And if you have,
Ryan knows I hate that work from home. I
Yeah.
think it's open Pandora's box, but yeah.
yeah,
Just too easy to take a picture of screenshot and
yeah, yeah. I mean, some work from home is good. I mean,
Yeah.
it lends itself to it, but
Right.
financial, probably not the best.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's some industries been doing it for decades, and
yeah,
it's been great. And there's some that where, like I was saying, in the financial services industry, we couldn't even bring in a little thumbnail.
Right.
That was illegal, basically, from compliance. And now you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, Greg, you were saying a little bit ago that you've been a professor for 25 years, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what specifically got you into cybersecurity and AI as a field of expertise? Because I think you've been in it, like you said, before it was popular.
yeah, yeah. Okay, so I was corporate. I was a programmer and database administrator for about 15 years before I decided I wanted to go into education. And actually, I was interested in high school, but at that time, you had to go back and go through student teaching and all that kind of thing. And it isn't practical to do that if you've got a family. So I decided to go to Michigan State and get a doctorate instead and go to the university, which probably was a better move.
Okay.
And that was 1999, 2000. That was the first school year that I was teaching. And that's right about when we had the Twin Towers go down, 2001. And one of the things that happened with the Twin Towers is they created the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
And in 2002, I think it was 2002 or 2003, I started teaching some digital forensics classes, and it was primarily for our criminal justice students. But at that time, there was like 5 people in the country that taught digital forensics. I mean, it was pretty rare. And Department of Homeland Security needed to have grant reviewers to determine, when people are asking for money, if it's going to be money well spent. So, for example, a police officer would be at a crime scene or an accident scene, and a fire truck would be there, and they couldn't talk to each other on the radios because they're different frequencies.
Okay.
So there was all of this grantable money to solve challenges like that and enhance the information sharing, that type of thing. So they asked me to do grant reviews, and I did that for 3 or 4 years. And so I would read what they're requesting and then look and see, do they have the background and the ability to pull off what they're proposing, and say, yeah, give them the money, or no, don't. And eventually there was this request for this Lincoln visual analysis software, which I was not familiar with. And what this does is, think of like a peacock diagram where you can relate like this person with this phone with this house. And a lot of times on the crime shows, you'll see a wall and they'll have like pictures with string on it. Okay, so this was kind of an automated way to do it. But I wasn't familiar with the software, and I'm like, if I'm going to make a good decision, I better become familiar with it. So I called up the vendor that sold it. At that time, they were a British company. Poor Dutch professor, do you have an academic program so I can look at your software? And they said, sure. But if you're going to use it, you got to be trained. And I'm like, okay, how much is that? Because I knew in my corporate days that, at that time training was like $5,000 a month, or excuse me, $5,000 a week.
Okay.
And they said, you can have as much as you want, but you got to come here. And the training was in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
And everybody in the class were 3-letter people. Okay, FBI, CIA, DHS, whatever.
Okay.
And when you go away to a conference or something like that, a training, a lot of times everybody goes to lunch together. And I'm just listening to what they're dealing with. And it's like, man, what you got to do and what universities are, they're not the same. And I said, correct. So I went home and all summer brainstormed, and using the connections that I had from various agencies and stuff, proposed what we call the Information Security and Intelligence Program. And there were really no cybersecurity programs at that time. There were information assurance programs. A lot of people thought that cybersecurity was nothing more than network access, that type of thing. So it was quite a headwind to propose a new degree like that. And I wanted the security and the intelligence together because the cybersecurity threats are after the data, and you got to be able to do something with the data, so you need that intelligence piece. So if you looked at the program, we have like a Lincoln Visual Analysis class in there, which is that software that I went to investigate. There's a competitive theory class in there, and that was by the suggestion of a friend that I had that worked in the Pentagon.
Okay.
So I went to the Pentagon, and he showed me around, and he says, if nothing else, have a competitive theory class, because what happens is we think we know what happened, go down that path, and it wasn't, and the path's gone cold, and we have no other options and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that's
competitive theory where it's making sure you're not just going down one path?
You come up with many different potential explanations.
Okay.
And it's kind of think of it like a spreadsheet. So you list all the potential explanations, and then you look at certain characteristics that maybe are part of what you're trying to investigate, and then you put a weighting on, okay, this one, it's probably a 3 out of 5. And this one, it's maybe a 4 out of 5, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And then when you get done going through that scorecard, you can look at the weightings to see what's the most reasonable explanation and that kind of thing. But it also makes you try to find other explanations and make sure that your criteria are the correct criteria too. And that actually was what we used, was developed by Richard Hewer in the intelligence community.
Okay.
He created that. But there's similar things for finance in organizations. If they want to do modeling in terms of rate of returns and things like that. So it's kind of similar. But anyway, that's how the degree started. And it basically started from just offering a couple of classes in forensics for criminal justice students to help them differentiate from other criminal justice students.
Okay.
Into what became, well, and has been one of the more significant career opportunities and industries for growth.
Yeah.
So, I've taught on 4 continents. I don't know how many countries anymore. I've had students from 58 countries. It's been fascinating. I've done a few Fulbrights. So I taught the first digital forensics classes in South America, and then I literally was housed within Chile's equivalent of the FBI and worked cases with them and trained them because they had no formal training. Did something similar in Peru, India, the Netherlands, Hungary, all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah. So, that's how it started.
Yeah.
And then
as that first class changed the direction of your life.
It did. And if you would have asked me in 2002 if I would have that big of a change, I wouldn't have thought it, because I really liked being a programmer, database administrator, probably database administrator a little bit more than a programmer. But that whole software development process is pretty fascinating. And there are a lot of cybersecurity aspects in that. But that's how it started.
Wow. Well, you're here at Ferris State, and all the students here have been blessed to have you as leading them through this, and all the other students around the world, and all of us lay people get to be benefactors of what you've been teaching a lot of people for a lot of years.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to look back because the few people that were kind of in on the ground floor, if you will, and a lot of people are either retired now or getting ready to retire, and so you're kind of watching the torch pass,
Yeah.
if you will.
I wasn't thinking about this question ahead of time, but as you're talking, I'm just kind of curious. If somebody wants to get into this space or the enforcement of this space, how much of is it a requirement that they have a great technical skill, or are there other skills that are very necessary to be effective at solving these problems?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I ask someone that's interested in going into cybersecurity, I ask them two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, do you like to do puzzles?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, how do you deal with frustration?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I ask them how they deal with frustration is a lot of times you are working through something that nobody's ever had to work through before, and you've got to kind of figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go down those wrong bunny trails. And a lot of times the cybersecurity people that the perpetrators have a passion for it. And if you don't have a passion for cybersecurity, you're just in it to a career or something like that, it's going to be pretty obvious.
You won't outsmart them.
You're not going to outsmart someone.
You're not going to win that game.
Right,
Yeah.
right. In terms of the careers, it's such a broad field now. I mean, you could be in governance, risk, and compliance and not be a technical person at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a major area and a kind of a common managerial area within
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity. Because risk and compliance is, you're looking for exposures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of forensics or incident response, a lot of people think of that as law enforcement, and maybe that's where it kind of used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it is corporate-based. A lot of corporations have their own incident response teams. You could be more on the intelligence side,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. You could be in pen testing. Pen testing is what we call like hacking hardening.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to discover your exposures before someone else does.
Mm-hmm.
Very much a technical skill,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to keep up on it because there's new techniques, there's new exposures, there's new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So that to go into pen testing, you've got to be motivated to stay abreast of it for quite a bit of time. Whereas, governance, risk, compliance, certainly it's changing, but it's not the rapid rate of change, if
Yeah.
you will. So
Financial background.
financial background's great because it's almost always financially
money.
motivated.
They're doing it for money.
They're doing it for money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's an analogy I've been using lately. Ryan and I were talking about it on the way here. Is a merry-go-round spinning around pretty fast, and if you want to get on the merry-go-round, you got to be moving at a faster rate than the merry-go-round is.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to succeed at getting the criminals, you have to have a higher intensity level than the criminals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to take that merry-go-round
Yeah.
example. It's a good one.
Well, we jumped on a merry-go-round at the Tour de Youp, and I haven't pushed anybody on a merry-go-round in a long time. I'm like, damn, this thing is going fast, and that metal bar is hard.
Yeah.
And you're not getting on unless you're going faster. I got a few more questions on cybersecurity. Then we're going to jump into AI.
Okay.
So I've got a friend that her dad, unfortunately, is in the midst of a love scam, and the debate they're having now is he being scammed or not? He doesn't believe that he is, and it seems quite obvious, that he is. So I've heard love scam. I've heard a phrase called pig butchering. What other headline or name scams are out there, and what do people look for? Because maybe it's simple, maybe it's complex, but I remember I've seen a lot of real estate scams in my life, and that was simple. Like it had the same 3 or 4 things. This is a great yield. Don't tell. I'm just giving this to my friends. Don't go advertise it because I got to give. You know what I mean? And it all had the same red flags, and they're quite simple. There's just a few of them. And the main logical thing is, if he's promising to double your money in a year and a bank's only charging 7%, why?
Right.
Is he going to do? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, are there obvious things to look for? Are there a handful of scams that are predominant right now? Are there obvious signs to look for? Or how complex is it?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the pig butchering or the love scams,
Gold brick or gold something. There's that one.
yeah, gold diggers. There's all kinds of vernacular for it. But,
Okay.
But essentially, someone preys on someone and uses their relationship to obtain funds from them in one way or another. And one of probably the most significant red flags is actually being able to meet that person, because it typically is an online situation, and you may think you're talking to a 35-year-old female when in fact you're talking to a 25-year-old male, and they have no idea. And a lot of times, 2-3 months into it, there will be some sort of a scenario where not the love interest, but the love interest's acquaintance had something bad happen to them. And so they need $10,000 or whatever it is. And it typically goes in steps like that, where they needed $10,000, and so they send them $10,000, and life is still good. Hey, I love you. You're doing great things, and it keeps building. I also know someone that fell into that trap. It's ceilinged at $50,000, which is a lot of money, but it can be much worse than that. Yeah. But the red flags are simply asking for money.
Okay.
And you've never physically met the person.
Okay.
And often it's couched with someone they know. They're not necessarily directly asking for the money. They're kind of insinuating that someone that they know really needs the money, and that type of thing. So
This one in particular that comes to mind recently, his wife passed away. This lady, whoever it is, befriended his son online. Said they got some mutual acquaintance or whatever, and then contacted the dad saying, "I'm friends with your son, and so sorry to hear about your loss." And then became very close online with the dad, and now knows everything about him. And he's got pictures of the house and the art, and what his travel schedule is, and and he's happy that he has an acquaintance. And from his perspective, don't my kids want me to be happy and have an acquaintance, and all they can see is scam.
Right. Yeah. It's
which it looks like it's scam.
It usually is. I mean, there's a lot of lonely people out there. There's a lot of let's just say the environment is ripe for it, with the social media influence and so forth. And older people aren't necessarily social media savvy. They may use it, but they're not savvy with it. And so they may inadvertently kind of add fertilizer to the situation without even knowing it. There's that's another one where the relationship with particularly an older person that maybe has the ability to write a check for $50,000, even though that might be all they have, they develop this trust, and nobody else has met this person. Often the love interest will not meet like a daughter or a friend or something like that. And so there's only been that one-way relationship, or the relationship between those two people. There's no ancillary piece to kind of help validate it. So lack of physical contact, that should be the big red flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's complicated. I like it when
is.
it was simple real estate back in the day. That was so easy.
Yeah.
A couple other things on just being aware and protecting yourself. I mentioned before about you can check the origin of an email and even that has got more complicated. So phishing, right, is where you think you're receiving an email from somebody that you know, and if you look at the email address, it's a very convoluted something that has nothing to do with the person you know. But now even that can be disguised, so that's not quite as easy to do. Unsubscribing, I think I've been told, can expose you to some risks because you're clicking on a link.
Yes.
And so it's best to just report as junk, right? Just get rid of it. Don't unsubscribe, but block sender, report as junk. What other little, first line of defense tips can people do to save themselves from somebody having access?
Well, if you're going to maybe make a purchase, an online purchase, use one particular email account for that.
Okay.
Only. A lot of times you'll go to someplace you're only ever going to make one purchase, but they will give you 15% off if you put in your email and phone.
Okay.
10-minute mail will give you a nice little email address, and when they go to ask for the phone number, just skip that portion. Okay, and you'll get the coupon into the 10-minute mail that you can use for that if you were going to proceed. But that's also a way to find out if it is actually real. Another thing is a lot of the email services, Apple and so forth, will let you disguise your email. They'll call it hide my email, and they'll generate a random address that goes into your inbox, but it's only used for that one vendor.
Okay.
So then you can tell if it's coming from that vendor or not.
Okay.
Other things you can do, we like to sign up for athletic events.
Right.
A lot of times they have like age categories. You don't have to put in your birth date. You can put in a date that makes you that
age at that time of the race.
But don't put in your birth date.
Right.
Because that's going to be low secured things, and often those birth dates are even out there. And if you have someone's name and birth date, you're 3/4 of the way there to getting their identity.
Okay.
You might actually even do some misinformation to help scatter them. So, for example, mistype your address or just use a different address. If nothing's going to come in the mail,
Okay.
put a different address and that type of thing. Use a slightly different spelling on your name. I have a name that is always misspelled. So if I misspell it out there,
So run with it.
go for it. Yeah. If you have a unique name like we do, that's harder to hide, and that's why you want to be a little bit more into these types of, I don't want to call it deceptive practices, but creative practices where information might be requested that they don't need. Okay, and so you can give them information so that if they got to get in contact with you, they can. But there's no reason they need all that other stuff.
If you're using a date of birth that isn't yours, does that got to be in your password key because it could be part of a recoverable method? If you locked yourself out or something.
Well, if you just remember.
Yeah.
Like if you might just always put a fake March 1st.
Yeah.
It's going to be March 1st, 1973.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you just always use March 1st, 1973.
Okay.
That type of thing. But when you do that, where you start creating kind of pseudo identities, that makes it harder for cyber criminals to match up data that's out there.
Okay.
Because everybody's data is out there. And
they try to match XYZ, and then they know, okay, we got this.
Right.
Okay.
So, for example, when we had, some of these hacks, AT&T, wherever, they're getting hundreds of millions of records. So they get 100 million U.S. citizens. The next one gets 50 million, and so forth. Everybody's data has been hacked so many times that trying to keep your data out of it, it's almost irrelevant.
Okay.
So what you want to do is you want to add to that pool with misinformation to help muddy the water in terms of what actually is belonging to you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of probably the most frustrating things is if some company's hacked and they get the information, there's almost no blowback to the company.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fallback. They might end up having to pay a small penalty or something like that, but it's their cost of doing business. And the person that actually is the victim, they don't get compensated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they might say, here, we'll give you a year of identity tracking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens in a year and a month?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so.
And how are those services, LifeLock and others?
They're okay, but you know, you can essentially accomplish the same thing, just putting a credit freeze on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And all you have to do is just contact one of the TransUnion, Experian, contact one of them and it'll spread to the others.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have to contact each one.
Okay. Way back in the day, I think I froze all three, and I just keep doing it that way.
But you usually only get a period of time. It might be 6 months or a year.
Okay.
So you often have to kind of renew that, if you will.
Okay.
But that's going to be most of what LifeLock's doing for you. You might get these nice little reports and so forth, but you can get a lot of that stuff yourself at no cost.
Okay.
Through other methods, and a lot of what they give you isn't really all that valid. Or
It's
all that
definitely
valuable.
post-event.
Yeah. Or this account may be compromised or something like
Yeah.
that.
Which, good to know.
Good to know.
Not a damn thing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Now.
Right. And some of the things you do in Apple or some of the password managers may have built in a kind of an alert. So they'll maybe send you an alert that this particular account may have been compromised. You might want to change your credentials.
What about payment methods? There's PayPal. There's various credit
Yes.
cards. You know, is going to come to the day where we only buy something on Amazon and our credit cards is with one vendor. I kind of hate doing that, because there's so many small businesses that are trying to make a shot at it. But
it's kind of the same thing. I like to use just one account for all of my online transactions.
okay,
So then there's only one that I got to kind of keep track of and look at really closely.
okay,
And then the other ones, since I'm not using them, the chances of things happening are reduced.
so there's one that your physical storefront, physical whatever, but there's one that's online.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's almost interesting. Some of the local things, you almost want to go back to cash because they're charging you the credit card fee now, the 3%. So when you can pay cash, pay cash. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but especially for those little things, if it's for a vendor or something like that maybe is kind of transient.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other more tips, advice, anything else you'd like to share on cybersecurity?
Well, let's just briefly touch on social media.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not on social media for the most part. You're not going to find me on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that from me.
Okay.
But you're going to find stuff from those social media platforms that someone I know has posted.
Okay.
Maybe a picture of me, or I was at some event or something like that. So the thing to keep in mind is that it's not just what you're doing on social media, it's what your friends and family are doing on social media.
Okay.
And you might want to have the discussion of what you're comfortable with being posted. Pictures, fine, or whatever, but maybe some of the details about where you live or where you work or something like that, please don't post that.
Okay.
But it's the same token. They could post misinformation and kind of help with that obfuscation thing that we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
So you can kind of use it to help you that way.
Okay.
Yeah. But social media is the big one. Just be super careful what you post.
Because are you worried about like people knowing where you are to do home break-ins or something like that?
Well, or just assume your identity.
Okay.
To build the background, because a lot of times going back to the love interest. If they do a little bit of research on social media and they get to know a little bit about you and they say, oh, this person likes to ride road bikes.
Okay.
You can kind of develop a persona around that, and you have this instant connection.
Yep.
So that's the kind of the danger of what you're posting out there.
Yeah. Cat's out of the bag on that one for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
No hiding from that. When we take a family vacation, I usually, if I'm going to put something out there to my friends about it, I usually do it when I get back to town.
Right. That's an important thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Hey, look at the whole family's gone.
Right.
And we're across the world.
Yeah. Perfect time to break in or do something.
House is empty.
Yeah. Or that might be the time to go after the bank accounts because
we're not going to be diligent
Right.
or not see it maybe.
Right.
Different time zone.
Yeah.
We're sleeping.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome, Greg. Thank you.
Ta-da!